Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another segment of Bookends. He's Jason. This is our mascot teaser. I'm Chucky. We missed you guys last week. We had our new launch of our mobile app. And aren't you going to interrupt me?
Oh, I guess I can interrupt you now.
Now? I thought you were going to.
No, we wanted to make sure we lead with the up to $500 is back. All new signups on the app. You're getting ready for football season. Finding getting hot in baseball, got to get signed up for the app. Up to $500 bonus for new signups. Deposit $5,000, bet $5,000. You're going to get up to $500 and go all the way down. That bonus is 10%. So whatever your deposit amount is, you're going to get 10% back. And now's just a great time to get that new sign up done and get up to $500.
I think it's a great time now, especially with football starting. I mean, this is preseason. We've got the Hall of Fame game going on. You've got baseball, kind of the pennant stretches on right now. A lot of movement in hockey and basketball with free agency. The baseball trade deadline just passed. Olympics are kind of finishing up. So there's so many cool things going on right now.
Last man standing. When you come in to do your sign up for your new account, make sure you get signed up for Last Man Standing. We've got college Last Man Standing at $100,000, pro Last Man Standing at $150,000, $25 a sign up. Buy four, get the fifth entry free.
Win them both.
Win them both, you get take home a $750,000 bonus. So that's a cool million between both contests and the $750,000 bonus.
Yeah, Last Man Standing's been our kind of signature and staple contest for a long time, guys. And I think we're excited the college contest is back. Last year we just went pro with all the uncertainty in college football, but it's great to have college football back. A lot of guests were asking, there's not a lot of college football options out there. This is the best option out there. Last Man Standing, $100,000 guaranteed. So we're going to dive right into it, guys. We're going to start with, I think, the NHL and NBA. Just the free agency frenzy that we've seen in both those leagues. I mean, it hit home here in the NHL a little bit with Marc-Andre Fleury being traded out of the Chicago Blackhawks. We knew that the Knights were up against the cap a little bit. We knew that they had to make some tough decisions in the offseason. There was rumblings last year that Fleury would get traded. He does get traded to Chicago. He is going to play for the Blackhawks. He announced that. It's Leonard's team right now. They re-signed Martinez, but you still have to wonder about what that does to – I mean, I know the fan base is upset, but in the locker room. I mean, Fleury was the face of that franchise, both on and off the ice. And I think he's going to be sorely missed, especially in the locker room.
Well, I think from a player standpoint, obviously you wonder, hey, anybody's movable at any time. But what it really says is McCrimmon and the organization wants to win. And we expected this last year and didn't expect them to have all that money sitting on the bench all the time. And obviously Leonard goes down kind of early in the season, and Fleury ends up having a fantastic season and kind of proves his worth to the organization.
Wins the Vezina, right?
Yeah, but this was going to be Leonard's team. That was how it was set up, and Fleury was set up to be the backup. So this is essentially a goal swap from 2 years ago, where we get Leonard from the Hawks, and now we send Fleury back to the Hawks. And I think it screams to the players that, hey, we're going to continue to try and get better, and whatever pieces of the puzzle we have to move, we're going to have to move. And from a fan base standpoint, I mean, two of the Knights' favorites in Ryan Reeves and Marc-Andre Fleury both get ships out, as Reeves was sent to the Rangers. But again, I think it shows a commitment to the organization that we're going to continue to try and get better and look to win a Stanley Cup.
I think the interesting piece is that when you look at your prototypical Western Conference, the two teams that you can say are right at the top, the Knights and the Avalanche, both have goalie question marks now. I mean, I know we still have Leonard, but you don't have that tandem, which was arguably the best tandem in the league. But Colorado couldn't afford Grubauer. They let him go. They had to sign Landeskog and Makar, and you've got McKinnon coming up. So they had to make a tough decision as well. They traded for Darcy Kemper, but you look at the season that Grubauer had, both Grubauer and Fleury both in that Vezina trophy race. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the West kind of unfolds right now with those two teams going in different directions.
No, I'm excited to get there, and we've already got up Game 1 for the Golden Knights.
And who do they play Game 1?
The Kraken.
The Kraken
will make their visit to Las Vegas and T-Mobile Arena. So I think
it's October 14th. The line's up for that. There'll be a lot of props
Game
on the
1.
board.
The Knights are a pretty heavy favorite there, but a little bit of a pause. Let's enjoy baseball season and the start of football, and we'll jump into hockey. But I know those hockey futures, a lot of teams, a lot of movement, and some interesting pieces going. So there's obviously available betting on the Cup, and we'll have soon enough. We'll have total points for the season, and you'll start to see props on certain players as well.
Yeah, I think the two biggest drops were Chicago, with not only getting Fleury, but picking up Jake McCabe from the Sabres, and then trading for Seth Jones, and then the Devils too, picking up Dougie Hamilton. I think both both those two teams, we saw a little bit of a drop in the futures as well. Some teams were raised, like Buffalo, even though they still held on to Jack Eichel. They really have gutted that team pretty much at this point. I still think that Eichel doesn't play for the Sabres this year. I think he has that surgery, and at some point they look to deal him for something. He wants out. His agent wants out. They're a team right now with a bunch of young kids. They're not going anywhere. I think Eichel gets dealt as well before the season starts. Looking at the NBA, I mean, they are just throwing money around. I mean, with those TV deals that they have, you look at these teams right now, if it's the Lakers, the Bulls, the Knicks, the Heat, so many teams have kind of changed the face of what their teams look like now. There's a number of teams that have kind of the big three. Maybe Chicago has the big four, but it's interesting the way that they're throwing money around, and the face of these franchises has changed pretty dramatically in the last kind of 72 hours.
Yeah, and I think internally or media-wise, the big three is a term that's maybe utilized a little bit too loosely in a lot of these moves. And the Bulls talking about a big four. I don't know if they're the big three. They've got three solid players,
well,
four solid guys.
I think for them, when you look at what they had in the past, and when you can put guys on the court now that are all-stars, and you have guys like that, I think it kind of changes a little bit. I think the fans' perception's a little bit different. You become more competitive. The Bulls made these moves for today. I mean, you look at the trades that they've made going back to last year, I don't think they have a number one for 3 years. And a lot of teams have kind of done that. And we talked about it off air with some of our young interns that are here in attendance today. And, we kind of contributed and we talked about it, that you're drafting for potential. So those number one picks in the NBA don't mean as much as they did maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So teams are in that win now mode. And I think you look at what Brooklyn did and you look at the Lakers, and other teams are looking to have those big name superstars that really kind of are game changers, put butts in the seats, and get people to start watching those teams play.
Yeah, and obviously, you talk about the Lakers and adding Westbrook, and to me that's a big three. They've created the monster there, and then bring in.
They still don't have anybody that can shoot from the outside.
Yeah, well, that they think they solved that with Carmelo Anthony, but I don't know if that's a fix. And obviously the big three that we have in Brooklyn, and we saw the Bucks able to kind of steal an NBA championship this year with some of the injuries that we saw both in Brooklyn and in the Lakers, and Phoenix being able to knock off the Clippers after the injury to Kawhi. So we saw some key injuries that allowed them to kind of, I won't say backdoor to the NBA championship, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what happened. So I still think that those are kind of the two big three that we really have. I really like the move Kyle Lowry down to the Heat. I think that's a big move, and tanning him up with Butler. And some of the other movement, though, at the end of the day, it's still going to be
picked up Tucker too, as well. I think
Nets.
The Heat have made a couple of good moves. I agree with you.
The Sixers, I like the kind of what they're doing there. The Bucks, obviously, we see them come off. They're going to keep all those pieces of the puzzle. But I think we're going to go through this season. At the end of the day, if these guys are all healthy, we're going to be sitting Nets, Lakers once again with watching what these kind of two big three that I'll truly refer to as the two big three combos. And the Warriors is another.
Providing they can stay healthy.
Yeah.
I think that's a big key. And it wasn't just those two teams last year. I mean, really the playoffs were based on that. We saw so many star players. I mean, not just star players on those teams, but some of the top 5 or 10 players in the entire league missed valuable playoff time, which really altered the landscape of the NBA Finals.
And we got to watch guys blossom. I mean, names like Trey Young and Devin Booker, and it was great to see those guys play on that stage, that deep into the playoffs and having the success that they did.
I think it's helped the NBA a little bit when you go back. I mean, there was such a stretch when the only NBA champs were the Heat, the Lakers, the Celtics, the Bulls, the Pistons, the Spurs, the Rockets. There was like 8 or 9 teams that had dominated over a 20-year stretch. And now, over the last few years, you had the Raptors win with Leonard. You had the Bucks win with Giannis. So still having those star players has really helped that league a lot.
Yep.
But so NBA guys, those futures are up. NHL futures are up. A lot of movement has happened. I think we've seen the Bulls, the Heat, the Knicks drop a little bit. That I think the Warrior team, as you mentioned too, they're right in that mix of top 5 and anxious to see what they do too in free agency. Curry got a huge deal again with them, and if they're healthy with Klay Thompson back, that's like getting a big free agency signing as well. So we're going to jump over to baseball now, and the trade deadline passed. The rich got richer, and it's just unbelievable. I mean, what the Dodgers were able to pull off. I mean, there was so many rumors with Scherzer going to the Padres or Red Sox. We were all kind of joking around that our crystal ball and our scouts were telling us that he's going to the Padres.
Well, we actually, I'll jump in there, but we actually had when the rumors were out that Scherzer was going to the Padres, we actually had moved the Padres to the favorite.
Right.
They became the World Series favorite for a period of time based on that rumor of him going there, and then obviously, Tatis's injury and some of the other things that happened that changed the course of that real quickly as the Dodgers moved to the favorite once that was rumored to be the signing. But again, amazing.
But they don't only get
trade
Scherzer;
deadline.
they get Turner as well. I mean, you look at those two guys, and it took a while for the Giants. It looked like they weren't going to make any move, and I know we were talking about it. It was like 17 minutes away from the trade deadline, which was 1 o'clock our time on that day, 4 o'clock Eastern time. It's like the only thing that makes sense for them is Chris Bryant at this point, and they did go out and pick up Chris Bryant. He can play a number of infield positions as well as the outfield. The Mets picking up Javi Baez, the White Sox Kimbrel. I know we're kind of dwelling on Chicago because we're both Chicago guys, and we were in tears that day, but it is what it is.
Well, it was the talk of the trade line. I mean, really, what the Cubs did in losing. We talk about those four pieces, but there were several other pieces to it of Jock Peterson and Chafin and everybody that they kind of was a mass exodus out of Chicago. So that was the key. That was the whole trade deadline was those guys and their talks. And we've talked about this ad nauseum of they were all free agents. They were all offered.
Well, that doesn't happen
and,
often, though, where you have all your stars come up at the exact same time. Being a Cub fan, these guys were all looking, as you mentioned, for big deals. And you have to wonder, a lot of teams will keep their aging stars way too long and their fan favorites. I'd like to see maybe one or two of those guys go back the way we talked about it and everything we've read. There seems to be a little bit of kind of bad blood between Hoyer and Rizzo. I don't think Bryant goes back. I think if one maybe goes back, it would be Javi Baez, being a fan favorite. We talked about it off air as well, as that he's just a dynamic player. He puts butts in the seats. He's exciting to watch. I know he's playing with Lindor now, who is his best friend, and we know the Mets have some money. But if he doesn't sign there, I think I would make Chicago maybe an opportunity for him to go back. But of the three, I would make him the favorite to play for the Cubs again.
I don't think you see any of them back.
I don't
Chicago.
either, but I'd make him the favorite.
I think that they've parted ways, and the Cubs are moving in a different direction, and they'll look for whatever free agents they can find to fill that up. But going back to just the kind of the start of the conversation on the Dodgers, getting Trey Turner and Scherzer is absolutely amazing. They actually signed Cole Hamels yesterday.
Right.
I don't know what he's been doing, but hopefully, from a standpoint, I know he's going to make $1 million and get $200,000 per start. So if they're looking for some starts there, obviously with the whole Kershaw banged up and Bauer and Gosselin going down and Danny Duffy they get from the Royals, who's not healthy at this point in time right now. So they were looking for some starting pitching, but they're getting really healthy in their players as well. As we saw, Betts come back, Seager comes back. Trey Turner's been on the IL with a COVID list, so they're going to have to find a space for him in the lineup. Taylor's been absolutely amazing.
They will find a space, right.
Pollock's hitting the ball well. Bellinger's, who's really kind of struggling for that team and has found himself batting, 7th and 8th in the lineup on given nights here. But the Dodgers are really set for prime for a run here. Again, kind of seeing what's going to happen with that starting pitching. I think Kershaw was getting closer to return versus not returning, and obviously the Bauer situation's a mess. But the other big one for me was the White Sox. The addition of Kimbrel and getting some of their injured players back really shortens the game up.
They still might get Robert back too at some point. So
their starting pitching has been really, really good. They're obviously in a division that they're going to win a lot of games because they're playing the Twins and the Royals and the Tigers night after night after night. But that bullpen between Hendricks and Kimbrel, they haven't really made it known who's going to be the 8th inning guy, who's going to be the 9th inning guy.
I think they ride the hot hand.
They said they really don't care. They just want to win games. So if the White Sox can continue to put up some runs, they're going to be really good come this postseason if they have those guys on the back end pitching well.
Yeah, I think when you look at the American League, you look at the whole American League East. I mean, you can't rule Toronto out. They made some good acquisitions as well. Tampa,
Barrios. I mean, their one pickup was, and they gave a lot. They gave a lot to get him from Minnesota.
But I think it's really competitive when you look at those four teams. With what the Yankees did, picking up both Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo. Rizzo's been on a tear since he went there, especially with that short porch in New York. You look at the Red Sox looks like they might get Chris Sale back. White Sox already have Jimenez back. Looks like they're going to get Luis Robert back. But it's just such a difference. We talked about hockey and basketball. Hockey, there is a extremely hard cap. Teams are making really tough decisions. Basketball does have a cap, but there's that luxury tax. If you go over it, you're paying a 50% tax. Some of the the rich, the big market teams can do that. But in baseball, you look at the Dodgers. I mean, they're encroaching on a $300 million payroll. It's just not balanced. I mean, they just can go out and pretty much do what they want, and they're expected to spend that money. Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, they went out and made those big moves when they had to. It's definitely an unbalanced kind of field in baseball right now during the second half.
Yeah, and I mean, that's
baseball.
That's baseball.
Yep, I agree.
And so that's why you're going to continue to see the Yankees and Mets and those teams mentioned year after year, and the Dodgers are what they're doing. And small market teams, it's awesome to see when they do play well, and that's why it's amazing year after year to see this Oakland A's team continue to compete. And on the American League side, Houston's another team that is going to be right there. They continue to hit the ball between Tucker and Gurriel and
they've
guys.
let big names go over the last few years. If it was Cole and then it was Springer, I mean, they're not really paying a lot of these guys that big money when their contracts come up. They're pretty much
they're young guys.
They're
good. These are guys who are going to end up making money in a couple of years, and they've still had a huge bat on the bench in Bregman that's been out for quite some time, and he's starting to make some rehab down in the minors. So they get him back. That adds another big bat to that lineup as well.
I think what's interesting for baseball, though, is that a lot of these teams went out. They spent all this money. But if you don't win the division and you become a wild card team, it's just one game. I mean, say the Dodgers don't catch the Giants and the Giants win the West. The Dodgers are a wild card team. They're going to play one game. It could be against the Padres. They could have maybe Tatis isn't out for the year. He's back. You're having to go against Darvish maybe in that game. You could lose that game. You might have to go against a Mets team that's really good or a Phillies team. It's just one game. Same thing in the American League. You look at all these teams in the East that made those moves. Yankees go out and get Gallo and Rizzo. They could conceivably play one game. Maybe it's against Tampa. Maybe it's against Oakland. But it's one game to move on. So you do a lot in baseball for potential to play one game to move on.
Well, but that's what was added, that wild card feature.
I agree.
That's why these play the game. You want to have an organization that is going to do everything they can to get you to be able to play that one game to continue to advance.
Personally, I wish it was the best of three, but yeah, it's just the one game, and I think that's what prevents some of the smaller market teams from making moves, because if they're on the cusp, like Cincinnati really isn't that far to the wild card. They didn't go out and make any moves. They didn't deal Castellanos, which they could have, who comes up for free agency. But I think it's tough for some of those teams because if they don't win that game, it's all kind of for naught.
Well, you saw that kind of in Seattle with giving up Graveman to the Astros, and there were, I think at the time, they were 2 games out of the wild card from that standpoint, and the team felt that they were making a run, and now you give up their number one closer, and it kind of aggravated the guys there that, hey, we're in this thing, and you just traded our number one closer, and they did end up making a move after that and getting Diego Castillo from the Tampa Bay Rays that'll kind of step in as their closer with Sewald. But again, it goes back down to the player psyche of, hey, we're trying to win this thing, and then the front office goes office and does something behind their back. Now, if you're a guy that your contract's coming up in Seattle, are you excited and to stay in Seattle where you don't have a full confidence that your team's going to do everything you can when you're on the cusp of making the playoffs or have a chance to make the playoffs, that they're going to go ahead and make moves that aren't going to work to help you on the field?
Yeah, I mean, all this stuff, guys, we can talk about all these leagues for hours, I think, but check out the app. I mean, we've made a lot of adjustments to all the future books and all these sports. Football, we're going to really touch on that and dive into that next week, although the Hall of Fame game is this week. And on our new app, I think we should touch on the fact that there is a lot of cool new features and enhancements, especially the in-play graphics.
Yeah, and this first week of the new app, the chatter has definitely been about the in-play. The in-play is vastly improved, much quicker, much faster, easier to make a bet, and we've got
the graphics are cool.
Yeah, new play-by-play button that's there and kind of opens up a field to you and shows you where things are at on the field. If you're watching tennis, it actually shows you, the tennis court and how the ball's going back and forth over the court. So it's really, really cool. Great job by our partners in Miami to update the app, and I'm really excited about where we're going moving forward and continue to add to the menu from a baseball standpoint. A couple months ago we changed to the penny line, and just as early as last week we started adding Major League Baseball team totals. So now you can bet over under each team in each game. So if you got a starting pitcher like Caleb Smith for the Diamondbacks, and you go, man, this guy gets shelled every time out. You don't have to necessarily go bet on a team or against the team. You can just go bet on your team to score more runs or less runs based on their total of the side of the total. So I think it's great stuff that the team continues to add, and we're going to continue to kind of push that envelope as we go into college and pro football season. So look for those markets to just absolutely explode with the amount of props that we're doing.
Yeah, it is exciting. I totally agree with Jay. The comments and the chatter from our guests has been so positive about the new mobile app and all the kind of cool and neat features on it. I know we're going to really dive into football next week, but we did put up MVP, total passing yards, touchdowns, receiving yards, rushing yards. There's so much stuff out there right now, guys, that we're going to dive into, and there's such a correlation with betting and watching, and this year you're going to see so many more preseason games on TV. We've always kind of beefed like, God, I wish there was a preseason package because people want to watch those games. I think this year you're going to have a bigger opportunity to watch a lot of those games, and we're going to have some props up on maybe some of those TV games as well.
Yeah, and we'll see, a new format to pro football and how many preseason games they're playing. So we'll see. Normally, we don't get to see a lot of the superstars as we go into these early preseason games for much more than a series or two. And so we'll see as we shorten up the preseason how much more time if we're going to see these guys, because it's tough to bet preseason games not knowing what's going to go on. You may be looking at quarterback, where you've got three quarterbacks or the quarterback depth chart.
The key, right? The rotation of quarterbacks.
If you look at that quarterback depth chart and who's going to get time on the field, who's trying to prove themselves, and those type of things to know what an offense is going to do from a preseason betting football standpoint.
I think one of the interesting storylines in preseason football now is the Colts. They already lose, all-pro offensive lineman Quentin Nelson for 5 to 12 weeks. But the big loss is Carson Wentz right now. We don't know how long he's going to be out. They've had opportunities maybe to go get a Nick Foles, to get a Minshew, to go out and get a quarterback, a Drew Lock. They haven't gone that route. They've got two rookie quarterbacks, though, Jacob Eason and Sam Ehlinger from Washington and Texas. And they're saying that Eason's going to play the entire first half of their first preseason game. So they've kind of already released that. And on the flip side, they said Ehlinger has been the star so far of camp. So you may see both these guys who are maybe battling not only for a backup job to Carson Wentz, but potentially to be the starter week one. So I think you have to look at kind of that stuff as well. Quarterback rotations are out there. We're in an information era. So that's kind of the key to look at is coaches who like to win, maybe some first-year coaches who want to kind of change the direction of the team and kind of get them fired up a little bit. But for me, it's really a quarterback rotation.
Yeah, and we're gonna be doing first and second half wagering on all the preseason games.
In play as well?
In play will be on there, and there's a lot more televised games. You talked about the preseason games being tough to find and be able to watch. A lot more preseason games on TV this year, so look out for that. And again, should be. I wouldn't say go nuts in the preseason. I would say dabble, have fun,
go nuts,
and maybe focus on baseball. But a lot to watch in the football, maybe a lot to learn that'll get you ready for that week one.
And there's a lot of young quarterbacks anxious to see Trevor Lawrence in the preseason, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. See how all these guys play in the preseason. I think Lawrence and Zach Wilson, it's kind of a gimme that they're going to get the start. I know that San Francisco, Chicago, and New England are saying that it's going to be Newton, Dalton, and Garoppolo, but it wouldn't surprise me if one of those guys somehow emerges pretty quick in the process to start. But that's what makes preseason kind of fun, to see if any of these young guys can beat out some of the veterans. And if Fields, Lance, or Mac Jones is like red hot in the preseason, that kind of chatter or drumbeat's going to get even louder about one of those guys potentially starting week one.
Yeah, and you talked on it, and the guys were talking about the NBA draft, and that we didn't really feel like we had the big names in the NBA draft. Well, this is one of those NFL drafts where we're coming into the NFL season this year, where that NFL draft was awesome. I mean, between all
Kyle Pitts,
all the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, the tight end. I mean, there's a lot of rookie talent that we believe we're going to see on the field starting. Harris for the Steelers, a spot opens right up. So again, be able to get a look at these players in the preseason. I know everybody's getting ready for their fantasy football drafts as well, to see where these guys are going to go. And so again, that's as the calendar turns here, we enter August. It's exciting to know football's headed back.
We said we were going to wait till next week to really dive into football, but we couldn't resist. Sorry. We are going to do as it gets closer to the season, though. I know kind of going into that Labor Day weekend, everyone kind of has their fantasy draft. So that week we're going to touch on some cool fantasy stats and kind of trends and things that we like that week, so you guys can take a look at as well. As Jason mentioned earlier, don't forget, up to a $500 bonus right now for STN Sports. All this stuff going on. It's a great time to get signed up. And if there's lines in the book and everything kind of gets kind of crazy and busy with everything going on, it's our recent sportsbook kiosks.
Yeah, we've got a ton of kiosks at every property. They're bright pink. You can't miss them. Really, really easy to use, both from a wagering standpoint and a deposit standpoint. You put your money in at the kiosk, don't have to come up to the counter, and then be able to get on your way and have the money on your STN app.
And it's a great way to skip the line if we are busy. Don't forget about those, not only at our Big Six properties, but also at our Wildfire Gaming properties and the El Cortez. Guys, it's always fun being back and chatting sports with you. He's Jason. This is our buddy Teaser. I'm Chucky. We'll see you guys next week on a segment of Bookends.